Hey guys, welcome back to welcome to my kitchen. I've been getting a lot of questions lately about how I starch, so I thought I'd do a quick video and park it here for you all. I used Sta-flow pretty religiously before they stopped making it, and I was really disappointed. I've tried a ton of different recipes. I've tried putting alcohol in it, putting vodka in it to try and give it longer shelf life, but at the end of the day, what I found worked the best was just to make it the day I needed it, use what I used and throw out the rest, and if I needed another batch the next day, make another batch the next day. Maybe you might get a day or two out of it, but it will turn on you, and you don't want to put that on your fabric. Once it does, it smells like old cheese and it's gross. So anyways, that's my tip for you, is to go ahead and make whatever batch you need for that day, and let's jump right in and I'll show you what I do. Okay, so I like to start with filtered water. I want to make sure that we're not adding anything that's going to put residue into my fabrics. And then you just start to heat that up on the stove. I usually put that at about a medium heat. I also typically use this cornstarch. Just whatever you find at the grocery store is all I've really ever reached for. And I love starch because it does make a mess no matter what you do. It gets all over the countertop. And I have an induction oven, so that's not going to catch on fire. Okay, so I like to put 1 tablespoon for every cup of water. So I put 4 cups of water. I'm going to put roughly 4 tablespoons of starch in. Okay, so you can see how it's really milky white right now. As it begins to heat up, it will start to turn more translucent. Okay, and just continually you're going to check on it and kind of whisk it back together. Make sure there's nothing sticking to the bottom. Honestly, this is the hardest part for me because I will leave the kitchen and go start doing something else. I think it's going to be a quick task and I get lost and I don't come back for a while and I've forgotten it. If you overboil it, there is a way to fix that, but it's easier if you just kind of sit here and babysit it. So I'm going to go ahead and bump my heat up. I was at 5. I'm going to bump it up to 8. I kind of like to gradually increase it. You don't have to do that, but you just want to kind of keep stirring it. Otherwise, it's going to want to stick to the bottom. All right, guys, I had a thought. I'm going to go ahead and make one batch where I accidentally overcook it, and one batch that I sit here and babysit so you can see the difference and understand what I'm talking about. So I'll just set this one up over here. I'm going to just do 2 cups because I don't need as much. And we'll start that warming up. Okay, you see how it's starting to boil there? I walked off and I was doing something else. Exactly what I was just talking about. Maybe I don't need to do the second much. So you can kind of whisk that back in. I probably caught it in time. I'm going to turn my heat down. I just want it close to simmering. I don't actually want it totally simmering. Okay, so over here on our other water, I'm going to add the 2 tablespoons, and that's just 2 tablespoon measuring cup. Again, it doesn't have to be perfectly precise, and then we'll whisk that in as well. Try not to get cornstarch all over the place. Okay, so you can see the difference, how milky white it is when it starts and how it's starting to turn more translucent. Okay, you can see how this one's starting to kind of boil over here. That's move you a little bit. You can see it a little bit better. So that one is starting to bubble quite a lot. And I'm just gonna let it go and show you guys kind of what happens to it if you forget to come look at it for a minute. This one over here, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off. I'm gonna give it another quick mix. The ratio that I found on a lot of different websites was a 1 tablespoon to 1 cup of water ratio. And even though I really like a really stiff fabric, that was too stiff for me. And often if you put that on a very dark colored fabric, you will still see it. Sometimes I have to like rewash my fabrics afterwards because there's so much starch that you can see on the fabrics. And I would do that anyways because this is a food product, but just kind of note to self, if you're doing a really dark one, you may not like the way it looks initially. So what I like to do is add an additional cup of water for each. So instead of 1 cup to 1 tablespoon, I'm doing 2 cups of water to 1 tablespoon. I just add it at the end so that way I'm not heating up that much water. So let's get back to the stovetop and I'll show you what's going on there. Okay, so this is bubbling a lot and I'm kind of scared of that. Let's give it a stir and act like, whoops, I forgot. I can feel it's like sticking to the bottom. It's really thick, almost feels like a syrup down on the bottom. So I'm just going to stir it and I'm going to let it keep going just to show us how it goes. So I'm going to take my extra cup. This is just room temperature water from the filter. Again, filtered water. And if you add it really fast when it's really hot, then you might get a little bit of separation, but we can fix it if you do. I also like to add that last 4 cups of water from room temperature so that I can use it on my fabric sooner. Because if you have really, really hot water, you can't, obviously, you don't want to put that directly onto your fabric. So I'm using that to bring down the temperature of the water. Sometimes if it's really cold outside, I've been known to take the whole pot and set it outside on the balcony so that it gets cold. I'm a dork, I know. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. So as you can see, this is really thick and gloppy, and that would show up. It kind of looks like Elmer's glue on your fabric if you don't do anything else with it. So if I accidentally walked off and left it and it looked like this, where it's really chunky, I'm going to try to get you guys a better close up because so I will take a couple pictures with my camera and insert them here so you can kind of see the difference in the two consistencies. It's almost like a bunch of air bubbles. It's clear and opaque at the same time. It's an interesting combination. And if I add the water to this, sometimes if I still do it while it's hot, it will still kind of correct itself. But oftentimes what I find is that I need to go ahead and put it in a bigger container, add the rest of the water to it, and then put it in either an immersion blender can go in the pot, or you could put it in an actual blender. And if you do that, you can usually get it blended well enough that you can still use it on your fabric. So I just wanted to kind of show you guys the different consistency. Like that is so thick. So thick. And I probably can't put the extra 2 cups of water in there. So this is what I do. I let it all sit and soak up and kind of cool back down. And I will get my drying rack set up and show you guys just how I like to soak my fabrics too. Okay, so before we moved over to the other side, I just wanted to show you guys this one more time. You can see how loose that is. I'm going to pour this. This one is super thick. Look at that. It's like jelly. So what I use is just a dishwashing pan from Walmart. Um, and I pour my starch directly into that. I'm kind of keeping an eye to make sure there's no big gunks. I mean, it almost looks like glue drying, if you will. So I did not do a great job of mixing this in. So I don't know if y'all can see that. It's like jelly. I don't want to mix that in at this point unless I'm going to use the immersion blender, because when that sits on your fabric, it makes, I mean, for lack of a better word, it looks like white boogers on your fabric. So no boogers on my quilt, please. Okay, so I gave that pan a quick rinse. And now I'm going to move my really juicy stuff over, and I'll turn it this way so y'all can see how it really just pours out like all in a lump. It looks like icing for like a sugar cookie. And it's really not that expensive. It's not like you're out a ton of money if you waste a batch. But if you're gonna try to save it, you gotta use the blender or the immersion blender to get it back together. Okay, so that was our 2 cups of water to start. I'm going to add 2 more cups of water now. And this pan's actually a little bit fat for the immersion blender, but we'll make it work. Have faith. And if you don't have an immersion blender, the regular blender will work just fine. And I'm going to kind of tilt it to the side so that I can blow that lovely good incorporated. Okay, so now that we've got all that mixed in, it's back to a more typical consistency. And because I starch my fabrics, I'm kind of more about the feel. And as you begin to create this, you'll kind of get a feel for it yourself. And you see if things work out to be too thick or too thin. Okay guys, you have to forgive me. This is a whole new room that I have not filmed in very much, especially not with this camera setup. So I'm working hard to get the lights right. But this is my drying system. This is just a rack I picked up on Amazon. I'll try to put a link in the description. Any drying rack will do. This one's black. I wish I'd gotten a white one because your starch leaves some residue and then you'll see that. And so it looks kind of funny on the black. And I think if I had a white one, you might not see that. The other thing I like to do is I just got one of these super cheap vinyl tablecloths. Sorry, I should have shown you before I put it down, but it's just got the fleecy back, vinyl on the top, and I throw down a layer of towels because this is going to be really drippy. And I want it to have somewhere that it can drip, and then when I'm done, I will roll it all back up together and I'll wait until I can use it the next time. So, I've got my tub of starch, and I've got my fabrics. Generally speaking, you're going to want to starch your darkest fabrics last, so that if any of the dye comes out, you're not contaminating your water source. I usually find that that's not a problem, but it's just a good practice to be in to start with the lightest. And I usually put red in at the end if there's any red at all. So I'm going to just drop these in. I've got the starch that we mix on the stove, and because I know these are woven fabrics, I'm really not that worried about it. I'm just going to set the whole stack in. Just going to let that soak, and I want to make sure that everything is really saturated. You kind of see how it's beating up on the top and not getting through all the layers. Sometimes I do leave my water a little bit. There's another dry patch. I'll leave my water a little bit warmer because I want to go ahead and drink it. I want to get all of that out of the way before I cut anything. But if I know it's really tight, then I won't do that. And I'm just going to try to get all those dry patches submerged. And you can make your starch as thick or thin as you like. You just got to kind of find that sweet spot for you. So those all are saturated on both sides. But I bet when I open this up, I'm going to still have some dry spots. So I usually flip it back the other way, do the same dunking process. See, there's some dry spots there. And I didn't submerge that all the way, so I like to have extra starch. It's really kind of nice now that I'm not so stingy with it like I was when I had the Sta-flow bottles, because I really want to get it really nice and saturated, and I have extra starch in my bucket for that. Alright, and then once I have everything really starched, really saturated, I'll unfold it, make sure that it's all the way through. See, I still have a dry patch there, so I'm just going to kind of refold it in a different orientation until I get everything really well coated. So if you had some fabric that you were worried about bleeding, that would be a problem. And this one is totally saturated, so I kind of fold it so that I can run my hand down it to get some of that extra liquid out. You don't want to like wring it like a washcloth, because if you do that, you're putting some wrinkles in it that you then have the lovely pleasure of ironing out. So after I get that done, I'm walking on the other side here. If I have room, I like to hang it over 2 holes. I like to hang it over 2. Sometimes if it's a darker fabric, that bow section might end up showing some of your starch. So do be careful about that. I just find that it dries a whole lot faster, because if I just place it on one, then it kind of, here, I'll show you. If I place it on one, it kind of suctions onto itself and it's hard to get it really straight. And then because it's touching, that takes a lot longer to dry. So I much prefer to just go ahead and take up 2 slots if I can. And obviously, with just these 2 back quarters, we'll have plenty of room. So that's nice and saturated. Bring it out and hang it up. And that's that simple, guys. I think the person who was asking me about this was curious about precuts. I do starch my precuts if I can, if the pattern has enough wiggle room for it. Sometimes I run into a little bit of a hiccup because things are a little tight, but I do, so for the, let's see, the charm packs, if I had 5-inch squares that I was dealing with, I would actually take a towel and lay it out over this whole surface. And then I would put my charms out on top of that towel. So the towel is going to absorb a lot of the starch, but it's still better than that. And same thing with a mini charm pack or a layer cake. If I have jelly rolls, I'll just hang the strips just like I'm doing these. So usually with a jelly roll, you've got 42 different strips to deal with, so sometimes you run out of room. You might do it in 2 batches, but that's really about it. I don't have a jelly roll that I want to start right now. I can show you guys. But once everything is nice and saturated, that's really all you have to do. Just wait for it to dry. And if you're impatient, you can always throw like a little fan on, or in the summertime here it dries pretty fast. And actually sometimes I'll put the ceiling fan on. I know that sounds weird, but it will help things dry a little bit faster, and then you're ready to go. Oops. So see, if I ring it like that, it's going to make more wrinkles in it. And the first couple times I starched, I wrung it out like a rag, and that was the big mistake. So. And then I'll usually just move my starch down here in case I have another project I decide to start at the last minute. Then it's just sitting there waiting, and then it gets to be a day old, then I'll go ahead and toss it out. Okay guys, so that's how I like to starch my fabric. I hope that helps. I know that there's been a ton of questions on it. Please comment below if you have anything that I maybe didn't cover. Again, in the past, I thought I could make this last a lot longer by adding alcohol or vodka or doing some special mojo cans. And I just found no matter what I did, I wasn't happy with the result. So I typically will cook a batch, and then I will starch my fabric, and then I will dump it out the next day. So if you like watching any of these tutorials or any of my other unboxing videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. It does help me out a ton. And until then, I will see you guys next time.